Hi, my name is Nathan Hunter. I'm with the Bronx River Alliance, and I'm the Foodway Coordinator here at Concrete Plant Park and at the Bronx River Foodway. The Bronx River Alliance, we are the stewards of the Bronx River. We do everything from clearing out the river, maintaining the banks of the river, removing trash, and teaching community members about the river and all the things that interact and affect the river's health. We do so much more than that, but here in this park today, we're going to be talking about the Bronx River Foodway, which is New York City Parks' individual pilot project to explore public edible gardens as they exist inside of a city park. Really thinking about how do edible landscapes blend into a public landscape or a city park. Here in Concrete Plant Park, this used to be a concrete factory. You can see behind me red silos. So the red silos behind me are remnants or relics from the former park's history of a concrete factory. Closed in the late 80s, organizers and community members really protested for the creation of this park and access to the Bronx River. At that point, partners from the Point CDC, Youth Ministries for Peace and Justice, Bronx River Working Group, and so many others came together to claim this space with New York City Parks as a city parkland. So we're really excited to have this space. It's a jewel here in the Bronx along the Bronx River near Hunts Point and near the Soundview area. And this is a place where people can come to access the river directly. So launch canoes here in the space. Folks can come and just lounge in some of the chairs and just enjoy the beautiful atmosphere. Or you can come and explore the Bronx River Foodway, a piece of green infrastructure here along the Bronx River, full of wild, perennial, native plants that are both edible, medicinal, good for our health and well-being. So the Bronx River Foodway is filled with native plants that include everything from fragrant plants to pollinators to berries and fruit. So in this space, it's quite dynamic. Folks will find a lot of things that are unfamiliar to them, but they'll also recognize some things that are familiar to them. So starting with the unfamiliar, you'll find things like late boneset, maybe some things like northern bayberry, things that are both beneficial for pollinators, but also for humans. For instance, late boneset is really great for warding off the flu and the common cold. Northern bayberry, for example, can be used as a bay leaf substitute. So you can add it to recipes while extracting those nutrients that can keep you healthy over the winter. Other things you'll find here are a whole host of pollinating plants that offer both habitat and food for our pollinators like butterflies and bees, as well as mammals and birds. So here you'll find echinacea, a familiar medicinal plant, good for sore throats. You'll find tons of New England aster, really great for respiratory health, thinking about as we move into the winter and thinking about our community's needs as a community that does suffer from respiratory illnesses, including asthma. As you move further south in the park, you'll notice that there are blueberries, you'll find raspberries, service berries, a plant that is very similar to blueberries. Their fruit is very similar to blueberries, but might be a little unfamiliar to folks. So you'll really be forced to kind of explore and really decipher what is growing here. Some of the things that you can access to guide you through those trips through the Bronx River website, through bronxriver.org/foodway, is a field guide. So you can actually upload a draft copy of a field guide I've created to help guide you through this space and understand what plants are growing here. Regularly throughout the season, pre-COVID and during COVID, there's stewardship opportunities. So you can come on out and actually contribute to the space and understand the plants one-on-one with volunteers and folks who understand what's growing here. Really excited to introduce Concrete Friends, a Friends of group for the park consisting of residents and volunteers, neighbors of this park, and really they are advocates for this space and really have stepped up to provide access and understanding of the Bronx River Foodway, as well as the river and all the different resources that are here inside this park. Before the Bronx River Foodway was here inside of Concrete Plant Park, the footprint of this space was solely grass. What's exciting about having a raised garden, if you will, is it's actually able to sequester or hold on to water, mitigating some stormwater issues that we have here in this park. Thinking about its industrial history, we are standing on the remnants of a concrete factory. Much of this property was concrete and still is concrete below the soil level. In addition to that, we have issues with compaction, so that all leads to flood events that happen actually here in the park. Since then, since building this green infrastructure, it acts like a giant sponge and helps absorb that water, holding it for drier times to be released into the systems, into our aquifers and such, but also for these plants to thrive. So they themselves act like these giant straws sucking up water and holding it to provide and produce all these great plants. Throughout the foodway, you're gonna notice that there's a dry riverbed. During really heavy extreme rain events, overflow from these spaces, extra water that billows out from the soil, goes into the dry riverbed and funnels down into a rain garden where it is captured. That is a deep basin that is filled with rocks and pebbles and plants, all of which taking advantage of that nice store of water to really let that slowly percolate back into the earth and really keep it from just rushing into our sewers or rushing even into the river. Part of this whole process of having green infrastructure is it's actually cleaning that water, cleaning the pollutants that are naturally in the air, as well as any pollutants that might be residual on the earth. So these plants are also filters, cleaning out any of that material before it enters the rain garden, which then overflows into our aquifers or even the Bronx River. This all has large impacts that we are still studying and still trying to understand. Part of this is also thinking about soil health. So in order to have really good retention, or ability to have retention of water, you have to have really good, healthy soil. So what we've been examining this year in the park has been exactly that, has been soil health and carbon in the soil. Working with the Carbon Sponge Project, we have been studying really how the soil life has been thriving, specifically looking at a perennial native garden and thinking about the attributes of native plants as they contribute to the soil health. So that's exactly looking at the health of microbes and bacteria and invertebrates like worms. Because this is a public park that is open 24/7, 365 days a year, due to our positioning next to the East Coast Greenway, the Bronx River Greenway, where folks can traverse between parks on bike, this space is highly used by people. And we see people climbing up the hills, we see people exploring the plants and traversing inside the gardens, which means that we naturally have erosion, we naturally have wear and tear on the space. So adaptive principles and adaptive management is really something we have had to think about over and over again. A lot of what we're considering all the time is this plant edible? Is this plant useful? Does it have multiple benefits, including being a host plant for pollinators and food for pollinators? So the way we've gone about all of this has been really examining some of our best plants, including creeping thyme, strawberries, catmint. All of these have helped kind of contribute to erosion control here in this park on these small banks of what is a giant raised garden. So this whole entire space is slightly, at its highest point, it's about 3-4 feet. And so you will have some slopes where you will see just natural erosion from rain and then erosion from humans. So we use tons of creeping thyme to supplement that, as well as ajuga, bugleweed, and some others to kind of hold that up. Now, because of also its historical industrial past, flooding is always still a thing we're talking about. And so most recently, we've actually added a native grass berm that has been funded through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, specifically to focus on sequestering more of this water here in the park. So this native berm, full of native grasses, including Shenandoah switchgrass and some juncus, has been really effective in actually preventing water from flowing into areas that are naturally recreated, where folks play soccer and have picnics. And so this natural berm, shaped in a half circle that really ends the foodway, acts as a cap to hold any extra water back to prevent additional disturbance during the summer months when natural rain flow kind of builds up on this gradient here in the park. Where I'm standing it's a natural slope, so water naturally wants to to flow behind me, leading into kind of this flat terrain where folks play. So this native berm has really been effective in withholding that water, and has been something we've been really watching to see how it changes the shape of our park, quite literally. So the Bronx River Foodway is an example of a food forest. A food forest is really a multi-layered system that mimics a natural ecosystem or a natural forest. So here at the Bronx River Foodway, we focus on what is edible, but we think specifically about what is native and perennial. We think about design in that way, right? Part of a food forest is about building layers, mimicking a forest. So things that you'll find here that mimic a forest include canopy trees. So in the park in the foodway, you'll actually find chestnut trees, which represent our canopy trees. These chestnuts are a hybrid with the Chinese variety, which makes them blight resistant. As many know, the American chestnut was nearly wiped out in the early 1900s due to a blight, a disease in the bark of the tree. So chestnut trees provide our canopy layer, our understory layer, our service berries and elderberries, and a lot of these shrubs that can grow up to 20 feet in some situations. You'll also find peppered throughout the foodway an orchard, apples, peaches, and pears. Those also represent our understory layer. And then below that, you'll find an herbaceous layer, things that die down in the winter. Those are our New England asters, most of our pollinator plants, as well as some of the more woody kind of herbaceous plants, maybe like Baptisia or false indigo. Below that, you'll find a ground cover layer, things like mint. You'll find creeping thyme. You'll find chives and other plants that are both medicinal and delicious in your culinary snacks. Throughout the foodway, you're gonna find some vining things. We find strawberries rambling about. You'll also find some Virginia creeper stretching between branches, providing habitat for both birds and for other critters. Surrounding me, you'll find tons of berries. These berries also represent some of these understory shrubs that you can find in our natural landscapes. Blueberries in particular are native to the Northeast, so that's a familiar crop folks can find. Thinking about food forests and their design, it's essential to have all these components, because in a forest there is no monotony, there's no homogeneous one species situation. You're gonna find a whole complex ecosystem. So here we think about diversity and how it relates to one another. All of those things contribute to the soil health, which help percolation and help stormwater retention and management ultimately.